Hi everyone. First of all, thanks for the 1,000 subs. More people watching is always great, and reaching this milestone theoretically means we could monetize the channel and make like 7 cents a month, baby.
At last, we can retire and give up this life of crime.
Before getting into the video proper, I want to encourage all of you to follow the backup channel on BitChute, which will be linked in the description below. Whether this means actually setting up an account and subscribing, which is free, or just bookmarking the page is up to you, but we've got this whole COPPA thing going on, and I've heard some buzz about YouTube pondering shutting down channels that aren't profitable. It's becoming increasingly obvious that the future of any independent channel on YouTube is not exactly secure. BitChute, which is basically the Wild West of video uploading sites right now, doesn't have that problem, but its search engine is terrible. It pretty much just pulls up whatever it wants to without any rhyme or reason, so I'd recommend going to that link and marking that page somehow, so if you ever come to YouTube and find our channel has vanished, you'll know where to find it. Now on to the main event. Welcome to Zelda-cember, because if there's a month and a title of a video game franchise that I can make a mashup of, I will do it. What, you think I have a sense of shame about these sort of things? I'm on YouTube. Clearly not. Once upon a time, The Legend of Zelda was known as a fairly simple series, wherein a blonde boy in a green Peter Pan outfit rescued a princess over and over from an evil pig monster. It really wasn't too unlike another famous Nintendo franchise starring an Italian plumber. Then, as more games were released, the mythology behind it kept getting more complex. Many of the games were soft reboots before soft reboots were a trendy thing, retelling the story of how Link the Fairy Boy went from nobody to a powerful warrior who single-handedly rescues the entire kingdom, while dropping hints and allusions that the other games were still canon and the work of different Links, either ancestors or descendants of the protagonist of that particular game. More and more, people wanted an official timeline to explain how all of this fit together. In 2011, Skyward Sword came out and explained that the three constant main characters of the series, Link, Princess Zelda, and the villainous Ganon, were caught in an endless cycle of resurrection, explaining all their different incarnations across the numerous games. Around the same time, Nintendo released Hyrule Historia, which finally contained an official timeline of all the games. And what a timeline it was! A massive three-headed monstrosity of a chronology with more alternate universes than a season of Star Trek. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of the official Zelda timeline. I think it overcomplicated something that was already complicated to begin with. They probably did it this way to allow more freedom when making future games, but considering that the most recent game, Breath of the Wild, is the last game of all three timelines, which have somehow joined back together, it seems like a major case of fixing what wasn't broken. Regardless of my personal feelings about the timeline, though, it does cement an odd little issue that's been floating around since the end of Zelda 2, To Link to Furious. You see, at the end of that game, there are two different Princess Zeldas walking around the Kingdom of Hyrule. People who just read the opening title crawl of Zelda 2 probably thought that this Zelda and this Zelda were meant to be the same Zelda, but they're not. As the pamphlet for the game explains, the Zelda from Zelda 2 is actually a distant ancestor of the Zelda from Zelda 1, who was put in a deep magical sleep for generations, and the second game of course ends with Link waking her up. But then what? Even though this was the second Zelda game ever made, it's the last game chronologically in the Fallen Hero timeline, at least until Breath of the Wild, a billion years and an unexplained timeline merger later, and the Link in To Link to Furious is the same as the Link in the original Legend of Zelda, which means that the Zelda for the first game is still out there, presumably princessing it up at the castle. And nobody in the Zelda fandom really talks about the implications or questions that arise from this. Well, I am today. I'm gonna give it a deep, thorough probing. Let's start right after the end of the game. The second Zelda, who's technically the first Zelda. You know what? I'm just gonna call her Woke Zelda because she just woke up. Woke Zelda has been sleeping in the North Palace, which presumably is a separate location from Hyrule Castle. In the Valiant comics, it's the same, but those aren't canon. So going by the game, we're going to assume North Palace is a different place. Also going by the game, it seems to consist of a large chamber where woke Zelda was sleeping and absolutely nothing and no one else. Which makes sense, the place has been magically locked up for generations. But it's not a great place for a single woman of class, especially with all the monsters crawling around the area, so presumably Link would take her to Hyrule Castle, where unwoke Zelda and the king and all their servants and soldiers are. And Link would say, "Hey, Princess Zelda, this is Princess Zelda. What a coincidence." Anyway, you don't know each other, but this castle kind of belongs to both of you, and you both have equal claim to the throne. So have fun figuring that out. Except it's Link, so it would probably sound more like... Maybe Impa could just explain all of that. But yeah, having two Zeldas puts a little snag in the royal line of succession, doesn't it? The rules of the Hyrule royal family are a bit vague, but it doesn't seem to be the kind of country where princesses are just married off to neighboring kingdoms. Good thing questions of succession didn't tend to lead to bloody civil wars in real life, right? Maybe that's why the timeline started dancing around after the second game and we never got a proper direct sequel. Zelda 3, Bloody War for the Throne, has a nice ring to it, but it might not be rated E for everyone material. In all seriousness, though, they would probably come to a peaceful arrangement. I mean, it's tough to judge the character of these two when they both only get a single line of dialogue, but they seem like nice enough ladies. More importantly, they don't really have much choice but to get along. This point in the Fallen Hero timeline is the aptly named Era of Decline, and Hyrule is basically the medieval equivalent of a post-apocalyptic wasteland. It's mostly been reduced to a wilderness crawling with monsters with a few isolated towns. The intro in the pamphlet even talks about how attempts to rebuild after the destruction caused by Ganon and his followers weren't going very well. Hyrule's rulers can't really afford infighting at this time. Woke Zelda would probably acquiesce her claim to the throne to unwoke Zelda, since that's the Zelda everyone in the kingdom is familiar with, and woke Zelda would settle down and form a new branch of the royal family. Generations down the line, when things have settled down and there's some grievance with the current ruler, then there'll be a civil war. On top of being realistic, that's how these games work. You save the world, then something terrible happens between games when you're not around. So yeah, make no mistake, people will almost certainly die because of what you did in this game. I hope whatever happened behind that curtain was worth it. Of course, that's just the political aspect of having two Princess Zeldas. I haven't even gotten into the supernatural elements of the lore. Skyward Sword established that all the Princess Zeldas are the goddess Hylia, reborn in human form. But if there are two Zeldas, how does that work? It's not even just woke and unwoke Zelda that are an issue here. It's any other Zeldas who lived before this point in time while woke Zelda was sleeping. Now that I think about it, what does that mean for the mother of each Princess Zelda? Because they're all Zeldas too, right? Every female member of the royal family has been named Zelda since woke Zelda was put to sleep. So, is not every Zelda the goddess Hylia reborn, or can Hylia's soul be shared by more than one person? Or is each Zelda technically her own mother? Does every Zelda die in childbirth when she has a daughter and transfer the soul of Hylia into the daughter? Is that why these games never have a queen, only a king and a princess, and Zelda's always raised by a nanny named Impa? Well, clearly the goddess Hylia's soul can either be shared by multiple people, or not every Zelda is a reincarnation, since Zelda 2 ends with... Well, you never actually see the other Zelda after this one wakes up, do you? What if, when you woke up this Zelda, you call Hylia's soul back into her body, and you actually killed the other Zelda by waking this Zelda up? Yeah, this is probably way more thought than these games' writers ever wanted us to put into this little bit of Zelda lore. Alright, one more thing. Zelda is traditionally the bearer of the Triforce of Wisdom, so if there are two Zeldas, which Zelda has the Triforce post-Zelda 2? Well, that, my friends, actually has a concrete answer. Zelda does not actually always have the Triforce of Wisdom in the games. It depends on which Zelda and which timeline. In the Fallen Hero timeline, before woke Zelda was put to sleep, her father the king gave 2 parts of the Triforce to the prince, and hid the last piece away, only telling woke Zelda where it was. That piece was the Triforce of Courage, which Link recovers in Zelda 2. Many generations later, Ganon stole the Triforce of Power, and unwoke Zelda broke the Triforce of Wisdom into 8 pieces and scattered them across the land, kicking off the events of the original Legend of Zelda. At the end of Zelda 2, all the 3 pieces are possessed by Link. So that answers that. Woke Zelda never had the Triforce of Wisdom. And Link would presumably return the Triforce to the royal family after the events of the second game. Or he could use its power to take over the kingdom and become dictator of Hyrule. How much do we really know about this guy anyway? Why does he never have anything to say? What's he hiding? Next up, I'll examine the evidence and reveal Link's shocking true nature in a 7-part series. Nah, just kidding. I'm not MatPat. Actually, you've already seen a little preview of the next video in this one. It's going to be about a very interesting early interpretation of the Legend of Zelda storyline. That pretty much covers it. I just wanted to talk about this obscure but kind of notable little tidbit of Zelda lore. Obviously, a lot of bits in this were tongue-in-cheek. I really do enjoy the Zelda games. Some of them are very nostalgic for me. Boy, that timeline though. When you look at the game's lore beyond each game as a self-contained story and a few direct sequels, things get very messy and weird. And surprisingly dark a lot of the time. Even if it's a universe that doesn't always come together very coherently, it's pretty interesting and fun to overanalyze. As always, if you liked the video, be sure to give us a like and subscribe and ring the bell for notifications if you want to see more. Have a great day, and I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season.
Link, er kommt to town.